beautiful bookish friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be doing my February wrap up, and I'm not going to lie to you, February was a weird month for reading. I wanted to read so bad, but I didn't want to actually pick up a physical book, so I did a lot of audio book reading, listening, whatever you want to call it, but most of these were on audio. So before we get into what I did read, let's talk about what I DNF'd. The only book I DNF'd was These Violent Delights, just because I was trying to listen to it on Hoopla, because I don't have the actual physical book, and I just couldn't get into it. I was really trying to pay attention, but I kept getting distracted while I was listening to it and trying to figure out who was who and everything, that I just sort of lost interest, and I didn't want to dislike the book just because I wasn't giving it 100% of my attention at the time. So I ended up DNFing that one at like 50 pages. I will go back to it eventually at some point, but right now it's just not what I wanted. So I also obviously didn't read Our Violent Ends because that's the next book in that series. But those are the only two that I didn't, well, there's a couple I didn't read, but that's the only one I DNF'd. Now let's talk about what I did read. Starting off, I listened to a book that I have already read, and that was These Witches Don't Burn. This one I read before and I really liked it. I think I gave it like a 4-star, but going back and rereading it, I gave it a 3, mainly because the main character and the ex-girlfriend, so this is our main character, I always think it's her, but it's her, and the ex-girlfriend, I could not get past the way that they were portrayed. When I read it, they were not this annoying, but the ex-girlfriend came off way more irritating, way more manipulative, and just really whiny in this book, and to the point that I'm not even sure I'm going to continue on with the series anymore, because the ending just didn't make me want to know more. I thought of the ending very differently, and maybe it's because I read the like little excerpt from the next book coming up, but something was different this time, and I don't know if it was just something I thought happened in my head, but yeah, so I gave this one 3 stars and actually might unhaul it. I'm not sure. I'm gonna hold on to it for now, but the next time I do a book sweep, this might be going. So the next book I borrowed from the library, and that is The Maidens. I had heard people talk about saying they either really liked it or they really hated this book. I didn't hate it, but I didn't find it anything extremely unique either. We're dealing with a woman who is a psychiatrist, and she does like group therapy for people with a lot of different issues, and she goes to Oxford to visit her niece because a girl is killed in Oxford that her niece knows, and she goes back there to kind of comfort her niece, but then as she's there, more girls start dying in these very almost sacrificial ways, and then there's a cult on campus, kind of. Cult-like, I would say. I wouldn't say they're a cult, but it's a group of women that this professor who teaches Greek philosophy and mythology calls his maidens, and they all kind of seem like maybe they're sleeping together, and there's just like, you know, only certain people are selected to be in this study group and stuff. So the concept was very compelling. However, the rest of it, it didn't really make sense. Like, the psychiatrist is being stalked by one of her patients, but also there's a guy that she meets, but her husband is dead, and I think it's really easy to see within the first like 50 to 100 pages where the book is gonna go, just by the way that she describes her husband and the niece and kind of their relationship, because she's not actually this girl's aunt. She's like kind of a pseudo, just like that's just what the girl calls her, is her aunt. So it's very I don't know, it's very very sketchy, and the ending was just kind of like basic, very Lifetime movie. That is how I would describe it. So 3 stars for that one. So that's one from the library that I will not be purchasing to have in my personal library. But I mean, if you just want something really dramatic and a little bit thriller-y, I would say that's a good choice. Then my guilty pleasure, as we know from last month, was The Selection. I decided to listen to The Elite, which is the second book in that series. And this one, I think it just went on for too long. Honestly, I feel like there wasn't a ton of development in this book. It was a lot of the same thing. The will they, won't they, but also there's this weird double standard because she gets mad at the prince for going on dates with other girls because this is like a bachelor situation. But she's also meeting up with her guard, who is her ex from back home, and they're having this kind of like little affair, I guess you could say, when she's supposed to be being like completely true to her, like the prince. And I don't know, it's just very odd to me. We had very few eliminations in this book, and that's what the first one I think kept me reading, was like who's gonna go home next. And this one, some people went home, but I feel like not enough did. And, you know, there was supposed to be this big, like, shock and awe moment, and it was very toned down from what I thought it could have been. So, yeah, I'm definitely going to read the next one because I want to know what happens. I mean, I obviously can assume that she gets chosen, but I just want to see how we get there. And the next book doesn't seem as long, and then there's, like, 2 spin-off books, so we'll see how I feel. So I actually gave The Elite 1 star because the characters and the plot were just so bad in this book. And this is a book that I have been anticipating since last year, Portrait of a Scotsman. This is the 3rd book in Evie Dunmore's Extraordinary Women series, or A League of Extraordinary Women series. In this one, we are following banking heiress Hattie Greenberg, and she meets up with Blackstone, who we've come across in A Rogue of One's Own, and I think bringing down the Duke. And he's kind of like this outsider in this like high society, even though he has a lot of money. No one's quite sure how he made it, and I think the best way that you could, basically he figured out the stock market before there was a stock market is kind of what happened, and he buys and sells these properties almost like flipping houses. But back then, those were just not ways that you made your money. You either made it through oil or coal or like your family's money. But he's very much this kind of dark, mysterious character. And they end up having to get married because there's a very Bridgerton-esque scene between the two of them where people see them together and they have to pretend like they were engaged the whole time in order to save Hattie's reputation. So then they become married and then kind of go off, and she lives with him, and we kind of see how their relationship develops. This one I thought did a really good job of giving us a lot of depth to both characters. We see how Hattie, even though she is this high society woman, cares a lot for people below her station, and how Lucien also cares for people below his station because he once was very poor and lost his parents. He didn't come from money, he comes from a coal mining town, and they go there to try and help, and how Hattie just really cares for the people and wants them to be heard, all while still being a suffragette and trying to get these women to support her cause, even though the women are looked at as equals for the most part in this mining town. I thought it just took a very different like path than the other books, and I think it was good because it didn't seem repetitive with the other two. We were in a different setting. We were in Scotland instead of being in Oxford the whole time, and it was much more focused on just these two, with the other characters popping in just once in a while, which I really liked. So the next one follows Katrina, and I think that'll be the last book in this series, so it'll be 4 books, but I am very excited for it, and I gave this one 4 stars, and it's one of my favorite books of the year. The next book was another reread for me, and even though I have it physically, I did listen to it on audiobook, and that is The Rue on the Rue Amelie. I finally learned how to say it. It's Amelie. So this is a World War II set novel. The first time I read this book, it was instantly like a favorite to me. This American woman marries a French man and they move over to Europe, and then tensions become very high in Europe and Hitler takes power, invades Poland, World War II starts. So obviously it's historical fiction, but a little bit rooted in truth if you read the author's note. There's a lot of moving parts in this book, and I forgot a lot of plot points, but they weren't ones that I thought mattered. Because she's fighting in this resistance, she's getting pilots out of Paris and back to the UK so they can be rehabilitated and, you know, fly back out on more missions to kind of stop the Germans. And that really happened. But I don't remember the main character being so, I'm gonna say, whiny again. Like, there were a lot of moments that she really was unsure of herself, and instead of being like, I'm unsure of myself because society has told me as a woman I'm not supposed to be sure of myself, she just kind of whine and complain. And then this 12-year-old girl that she's taking care of kind of reminds her that, hey, there's a war going on. Your problems, I don't care about them. Like, you need to focus on our task at hand. And so I actually dropped this from being like an instant 5-star to being 4 stars because of that. And I was just less emotional reading it this time, and obviously reading it a second time, not going to be as emotional. But really this time I didn't care as much, and maybe you need to physically read this book in order to get those feelings. But for me, I did drop this down a star rating. And one that I knew I was either gonna love or hate was American Royals. I also listened to this on audio, and I really liked this book. I gave it 4 stars, and I thought this is a book that definitely functioned the best with having multiple POVs. We follow Princess Beatrice, who is the granddaughter, or like great granddaughter of George Washington, and instead of becoming president, Washington did say he wanted to be king, so they are like the American monarchy. She is going to be the first queen ever to rule America, not as like queen consort, but an actual queen. Then we have her little sister, who's considered like the spare. We have her brother, who is her little sister's twin. We have Daphne, who's like this social climber who dated the prince at one point and just really wants to be with someone who has a high social standing so she can have one. And then we have Nina, who is their friend who has no royal ties at all, other than the fact that her mother works for the king and has become friends with the family. People have like a love-hate relationship with this. There were a lot of reviews saying that if you like books where the women just get manipulated by the men, you'll love this one. I didn't get that vibe at all in this book. And it was a really fast read for me, but I liked how it explored, I mean, you can tell just by the way it's written, like, this came out in 2019 or 2020. There's definitely like some references to the royal family in England, the way that William and Kate are treated versus like Prince Harry and Meghan, like those relationships just put into different characters. Like Samantha sees herself as the spare and is like this wild child, kind of the way that Harry was portrayed in the media, and that Beatrice is perfect and she's meant to take over like William, and kind of being forced to marry somebody. So it had a lot of drama. Like, this is very much rich people drama. It's not an incredibly original concept because Beatrice is meant to be an arranged marriage, but she falls in love with her guard. Samantha meets this boy, but her sister is supposed to marry him. Like, you know, it's all these kind of things that you expect when you're reading the book. Like, nothing in this book shocked me in any way, shape, or form. However, I did find it really good and want to read the second book. Now, I guess there's going to be a third, even though this originally was supposed to be a duology, but there's now going to be a third, and there's also a novella that functions as a prequel. So I don't know that I'm going to get into all that. When books start to get too many, like when there's a book 1.5 and 4.5 and a 0.5, I can't keep it all straight. I just like to stick with my main storylines. And the book I'm reading currently that I will hopefully finish by the 28th is Envy by Greg Olsen. This book came out in 2011. very 2011-esque, like teen drama, their friend is maybe murdered, but there's also like a paranormal element now coming into it. So it's like a less good version of Truly Devious so far. But yeah, I'm going to try and read that. Now, I didn't get to Betrayal, which is the second book in this series, Red, White, and Royal Blue, or The Dating Plan, or any of my carryovers from the month previous. So I still have a lot of reading to do before the end of the year, but thankfully it's only the end of February. So if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know. Let me know what you read, and I will see you guys in the next one.